Good afternoon. It's 5 o'clock, and welcome to our special joint meeting of the City Council of Crescent City and the County Board of Supervisors. For the clerk, would you please take the roll for the council members?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Gastineau?
I am here.
Councilmember Shalong? Here. Councilmember Murray? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Holly?
Here.
And Mayor Ania?
Here, thank you.
Okay, for the Board of Supervisors, now meeting in regular session. And I'll go ahead and read our opening. The Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte, the governing body of all their special assessments and taxing districts for which said board so acts, is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at the assigned time. All other items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate the public and staff availability. And if you want to do a silent roll, Tony, on the roll. At this point, we got. You want to lead the pledge? Sure.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No, he's out. So at this point, we're going to, in the board agenda, typically we'll do board reports and report from, we didn't have a closed session, so there is nothing to report on that. And we're going to save our board reports for the next board meeting, which is next Tuesday. At this point, we're going to go into public comment. Members of the public may address the board on matters, may address the board or the council on matters which are within the jurisdiction of both boards. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less and identify yourself for the record. If there's an item on the agenda, then wait till we get to that item. But all other items, feel free to come and address the board.
Eileen Cooper. Since this is an item that concerns both boards, as you are joined in the Local Transportation Commission, and there is very good reason for you to change your minds about the Highway 199 and 197 project. I want you to look carefully at the response document of the EIR. That's volume 3. It's on the Caltrans site. Over 390 citizens responded in great criticism of that project. There were about 4 in favor, notably Michael Sullivan, representing the board, Hambros, and some of Hambros' associates. I think the community is right, that their instincts are right. This is a dangerous project. Their concerns spoke to safety, and the lack of need clearly demonstrated. So I think it's time to change course. Within that document, it was shown with a special report that a computer designed the road with a 1-foot tolerance for mistakes. Only a computer is going to be able to drive that road safely. And the traffic study didn't, as explained by an experienced planner who reviewed this, it did not even assess all of the traffic that might come our way from I-5, which is where all the big trucks can come from. This is a deceitful traffic study. And you should ask for more. This community deserves more from Caltrans. It deserves honesty. And the citizens have good reason to be very worried and scared, and they need good representation on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Mr. Miles, you did,
I'm kind of disappointed, and I want to explain something to you, both the city and the county.
is his mic on? Yeah. Bring it closer to your mouth. Richard, you guys speak in the microphone. People are having a hard time hearing you.
Okay.
There you go.
I'll start over again. I'm a little disappointed at both the city and the county over a subject. For a year and a half, the Solid Waste Task Force...
Mr. Miles, I'm going to ask you to, it's on the agenda, the item, so...
No,
I'm gonna
no, this is not
Okay, so
on-
you're going to use your public comment period to talk and won't be commenting at the time the thing comes up on the agenda?
No, there's two different items, Mr. Sullivan, and I wish you'd give me the courtesy to speak on the item I'd like to bring up in front of both the county and the city tonight, is that I'm aware that there's only been one meeting between Eric Taylor and the county blight officer over the ordinance that we spent a year and a half and put a lot of effort and time in and tried to make suggestions on. It was explained to us by the director of solid waste that government takes a long time. I'm sorry. It shouldn't take a long time. We have blight in this community. My cities will have a day at the end of the month to go by and pick up people's trash, not trash, but their brush and the grass piles. But you got to do more than that. You got Mr. Gitlin trying to get his name in the paper, fighting blight, but you got to do more than that. You got to bring your ordinances jointly into some sort of compliance that will work for the whole community. It's like a piece in the paper. The greater Crescent City area is a large area. Mr. Sullivan, you got blight in your district. You go up 199, you get to past the tunnel, and there's an old shack there that people see as they come into down north.
Mr. Miles, I'm going to ask you, I give you a little more leeway in time-wise, so do you have any closing comments, or? Okay. Any other public comment?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Bill Lonsdale and I live in Crescent City. And I'd like to take advantage of this relatively rare joint meeting to lament a recent decline in what I regard as the collegiality and civility in some of our board and commission meetings lately. Now, while it's true, and not necessarily bad, that differences of opinion over public policy can occur, it's unfortunate when those differences result in behavior that detracts from the seriousness of the items under consideration. Most folks on the dais here have had, and all will have, the opportunity to chair meetings of either their respective decision bodies or of boards and commissions that advise and regulate. And one responsibility of a chair, at least as I understood it throughout my career, is to encourage among colleagues a certain amount of constructive and civil approaches to the problems at hand. Condoning harsh behavior by inaction or whatever, condoning bickering or vituperative language serves only to encourage more and worse of that kind of behavior. Those of us who have been parents or teachers or supervisors know that. I'd respectfully and humbly suggest that as we move along in future meetings of our regulatory and decision bodies, that those people who now hold the position of chair work a little bit harder to promote civil behavior and to ameliorate some of these differences of opinion so that only the matters under consideration get aired and the personalities are left out of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll... No.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sherry Blancardi.
Sure, you got to pull the mic down.
Oh, too short. I live at the Chicama subdivision next to the prison off of Lake Earl. I know I don't have much time, but I just wanted to bring to you folks' attention that we have some real issues in the Chicama subdivision regarding drainage, the construction of our home, septic issues, and we've come to the county over the last 7 years many, many, many times. First time that we came to the county to have them help us, we had a rat nailed to the door jamb of the house that was being built for us. We reported it to the developer, and it stayed on the house, nailed there for 2 days. We've tried everything, every complaint process that we thought that we could use to get help. We were turned away. We've been stonewalled, and we've been damaged. And I'm afraid that we're inviting people here to this community that may purchase this type of a home and not know what they're buying. And I know for a fact that that's going to happen. There's a house for sale in the Chicama subdivision now, and the folks purchasing that home are not going to know what they're buying. And I think it's very sad commentary on the complaint process that was in place when we bought here and has remained operating, as far as we're concerned, in the same fashion. We were forced into a long drawn-out lawsuit, and there were too many people that we reported it to in the county building department. There were too many inspectors, an engineer, and no action was taken. In fact, it seemed like there was a lot of cooperation between the county building department, a systemic cooperation with the developer. And I don't think that we just happened upon, and this was out of the way occurrence. I think it was going on. And I think there are a lot of families damaged in the community, and I'd like to have that addressed, please.
Miss, you do.
Can I ask a question? Was it tied to the problems in the building, or is it tied to the septic?
It's all of it.
And
Our house was not inspected. I have plans here that are on file at the county that are in our file that are not of our home.
I would be
inspection-
more than willing to set a meeting with you and try to figure out what's going on and see
I
if we
tried to
can
work
get
with
you
Mr.
assistance.
Hemingston, but, you know, I was on the phone with him in tears for 45 minutes, and it didn't help me.
I'm willing.
All right, well, I'd be happy to accept that help. I would really
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we're going to close public comment at this point, and then, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Our first acknowledgement this afternoon is the presentation and proclamation entitled "A Proclamation of the City of Council of Crescent City Proclaiming the Commitment to Safe Routes to Schools Program." And it's also a proclamation from the Board of Supervisors, and they're the same. Would you like to read it?
You,
Right, read it.
go, okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, we can alternate paragraphs, I guess, on that. Board of Supervisors, County of Del Norte, State of California, proclamation of commitment to safe routes to school. Whereas a lack of physical activity plays a leading role in rising rates of obesity, diabetes, and other health problems among children, And being able to walk or bicycle to school offers an opportunity to build activities into daily routines. And
Whereas driving students to school by private vehicle contributes to the traffic congestion and air pollution, and whereas
it is important to educate parents and teach children about pedestrian and bicycle safety and the health and environmental risks related to physical inactivity and air pollution.
And whereas investment in pedestrian and cycling infrastructure around the schools can also improve the safety of Del Norte County children.
And whereas our community has been actively involved in making it easier and safer for children to walk and bicycle in our communities, and the school zone infrastructure audit and circulation study will further these efforts.
And whereas on May 2013 has been proclaimed Walk and Bike to School Month, and citizens, teachers, administrators, and children are encouraged to walk and bike to school and work to and participate with other walk and bike activities.
Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte,
And the City Council of Crescent City
hereby agree to be partners in the Safe Routes to School programs for Del Norte County, and calls upon its citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to encourage everyone in our community to consider the safety and health of our children, passed and adopted this 21st day of May 2013.
Thank you. And is Karen?
Oh, we do need a motion though on this, yeah.
I move to approve proclamation.
Do a second from the board. Second. Been moved and second.
And I will, on behalf of the city, I'll move to adopt the proclamation.
I'll second that.
Any public comment on the proclamation? No.
Good evening. I just wanted to thank you all, and I really appreciate the adoption of this proclamation, because it's going to be one of our first steps toward collaboration, toward other policies, and getting our streets safer for the children. So thank you very much.
Howdy. We want to thank you guys for adopting the proclamation, and we'd like to publicly thank the teachers and the administrators in the school district. In addition, we'd like to also thank the county road yard and the city road yard staff who participated by donating some worn out and used signs that we could use as props in the schools, which really actually helped a lot, and even though it just didn't seem like a whole lot, it was a wonderful gift. And we'd also like to actively ask you to participate in the Safe Routes to School, Walk and Bike to School Day. We have a banner up front. Many of you have already indicated that you would help and participate by hanging signs, by walking, by riding your bikes, and even taking surveys as a teacher in our schools. So we'd like to actively ask you to participate, again, if you haven't already signed up, to walk and bike on the 24th of May, and, you know, lead a classroom. You could, you know, do whatever you'd like to do to help. I'll sign you up. Other than that, I think you guys probably know about what our program is doing in the schools and the curriculum that we've provided, so I won't bore you with the details because you guys are busy.
And you all have updated reports based on some typos that were in some of the previous reports, and on page 19 starts the policy recommendation section, and I'm happy at any time to discuss any of those with you further, but you'll see that it's different levels of involvement and collaboration. Thank you.
Yeah. Supervisor McClure.
And I just want to tell you that your, the bike giveaway was genius in relationship to getting the surveys back, because over the years, I've sent surveys home, and we call it the Levi Express, and it doesn't come back. And I think I'm almost at 95% of my students have returned surveys, so it's really a good thing.
Great. In case, Martha, in case you guys don't know, Martha was referring to our bike giveaway. We actually have the 6 participating schools will each be receiving a bicycle. The students, as they participate throughout the year in bike and Walk and Bike to School Day events, get their name entered into drawing. The more they participate, the more they will, the more opportunity they have to win. It's better than the lottery. And basically what happened is the Backcountry Bicycles has agreed to participate by fitting each of the children who win, or the youth who win, with a bike, a helmet, and a lock. So that a kindergartner's not getting a 10-speed, and they're getting a very nice quality bike. We're supporting local businesses, and we're helping the children to be safe.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. Any other public comment on this item? Yeah.
I just have to comment. As a school teacher who for many years has been encouraging weekly, daily, our students to get out and exercise in this beautiful community that we live in. It's always so sad to me to drive around and see that there aren't any kids out walking to the beach or riding bicycles around. Not anything like it could be. And I'm so happy to see this kind of thing. I read the Times Standard. I see what people are doing in Humboldt County. Recently, they had things that we used to have here, where they bring bicycles, they show kids how to repair them, they do a safety routine, and they give away helmets and all that kind of thing. And I sometimes feel that I'm a lone voice. I know I'm not, but I sometimes feel that for our students to get them out. They are so bound up in their devices these days that they are not getting out and exercising. And I think that we need as a community to do everything we can to get these kids moving and get them moving around our community and embrace that as a community. It's so needed, and so thank you for supporting this.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Okay, seeing no public comment, I'll bring it back to the board. Tony, could you pull the board on our vote?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes.
And Robin, could you please poll the council members?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Gastineau?
Yes.
Councilmember Shalong?
Yes.
Councilmember Murray?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Holly?
Yes.
And Mayor Enia.
Yes.
To it, the proclamation. Karen, are you accepting?
Our next item on the City Council's agenda is the introduction on first reading of the Social Host Ordinance. And that's an ordinance of the City of Crescent City adding Chapter 8.24 entitled Social Host Ordinance to the City of Crescent City. Mr. Blatnick.
Thank you. Appreciate being here tonight. It's been a long road, and I think our youth will tell you about that. They really prompted all of this happening originally about a year ago, and both the city and the county has devoted staff time to this, and so we're very proud to bring it back to you for your first reading, and we understand then we will go back to our respective city and county and hopefully get it approved at your next meetings. But I know the youth are just dying to come up here and talk about it, so please do.
Just a point of clarification, I believe the county, we already introduced this.
We introduced it, and then at our next meeting, apparently, I
Is it
understand...
a month? We needed about a month? Or, yeah, okay, so we will be voting on it the next meeting.
Right. We're introducing it tonight. Come on up.
Okay.
Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Holly Merrifield. I am the president of our Del Norte Friday Night Live Youth Council, and I'm also on the California State Youth Council. My name is Linda Tabor. I work for the Department of Health and Human Services Public Health Branch, and I'm also an advisor for the Friday Night Live Youth. As many of you guys know, because we've had many meetings with you, and most of you have been with us through pretty much this whole process. It's been kind of lengthy and in-depth. To start off, we surveyed our community members at the Youth and Family Fair and the Health Fair, and we tried to see what they thought if this was something that our community needed. Then we conducted interviews with key officials within our community, such as yourselves. We were constantly looking for different ways to help combat underage drinking, and we felt as if this was one that would fit us properly. We have facilitated many presentations to both the City Council and the Board of Supervisors, and we began drafting with our ordinance when we felt as if we had the right support. For those of you who don't know what the Social Host Ordinance is, it provides consequences to those providing alcohol to minors. We have developed it in the form of a fine, and if necessary, it can be moved to misdemeanor charges. And
we just want to let all of you know that we really appreciate the support that you have given us, allowing our youth to present to you on many occasions. For those of you who sat on the committee to draft the ordinance, the countless hours that have gone into this, as adult allies with our youth, this being the year of the child, we really appreciate, the process that has gone into this, our youth being able to build the skills that they need to do presentations. And not everyone gets to draft an ordinance at 16. So it's pretty important to us for our youth to see a follow through with this, and we really appreciate all of your support in this process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
You guys,
Is there any other public comment about this ordinance, this introduction of the ordinance?
and just for clarification on the county side, we've already introduced this at our last meeting, so we'll be voting on it at the next meeting to pass it. So.
And this is an introduction for the city council, and at our next meeting, we'll also be voting for passage. So is there a motion to?
I
Yes,
wanted
do you
to
have
make a comment.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
wanted to thank the committee who worked so hard on this. I know you guys put in a lot of hours, but Linda was saying how she was thanking us, but we really should be thanking you. If it weren't for the Friday Night Live and the students, we wouldn't have thought about having this. So it's very powerful coming from our young people, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Shalom?
I just wanted to say that, outside of this ordinance, Friday Night Live has been very impressive to me over the years. I know that when I was the mayor, you guys were conducting surveys on, what kind of knowledge I had, not only as just an elected official, but as a mom, what my son was doing or what his friends were doing, and what kinds of drugs were, kids taking. And I had no clue. These kids know way more than I do. How much, what surprised me the most was the over-the-counter drugs that kids are taking these days, and it makes me sad. The fact that you guys are out there doing this kind of research and educating people and educating the other youth. I know that you guys, did a town hall meeting a couple times that I was able to be a guest speaker at, and I just really am impressed. And a lot of people say, oh, the kids are either this or they're that, and you guys are amazing young people, and I am very proud of you, and so I just want to say thank you.
And I'd like to say thank you too. It was very much a pleasure serving with you young adults and getting this ordinance to where it is today. So thank you. Is there a motion from the council to approve this?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Would you please pull the vote, Robin?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Gastineau?
Yes.
Councilmember Shalong?
Yes.
Councilmember Murray?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Holly?
Yes.
And Mayor Enia?
Yes. Thank you. That vote was to read in titled only, and our next council meeting will be the approval vote.
Yeah, congratulations on the work you've done. It's good to see this many young people that actively involved from the very beginning on helping pass a county and a city ordinance. And as you know, it doesn't go real quick. I'm sure you found that out. So you did good work, and at the next county meeting, I imagine the board will pass that, and then at the next city meeting, that'll be passed also. So don't stop yet. So congratulations. Okay, so moving on to item 5. Discussion regarding Delaware County Solid Waste Management Authority. Okay, so this item was put on the agenda. As you know, this has been an ongoing deal, both county and city, for the last couple years and even longer in some cases. But a discussion that had happened regarding gaining an independent analysis of the possibility of privatization of the solid waste authority. So we brought it back to get more or less to get a survey from board and council members to see what direction what the feedback was from both. So that's the intent of having this on the agenda.
I would like I think a point of order, but I'm not exactly sure, so I'll leave it to the attorneys to tell me. But it is my recollection that the county discussion was to take a look at what type of structure was the best type of structure for the consumers of waste in this community. And that structure could have possibly been status quo. That structure could have been a withdrawal by the county, a withdrawal by the city. What would happen if there were unilateral withdrawal from the JPA, and what were the ramifications of all of those, and the questions of the cost analysis of what those would do, and that was the premise of the discussion, was to finally, at long last, take the entire continuum of the argument and have an analysis that was fairly bulletproof by it being an outside entity that would do the analysis. But the analysis wasn't a single subject of privatization. The analysis was much, much broader.
And that's on the table.
I had a few things. Since I don't sit on the solid waste board anymore, can you explain to me what your definition of privatization is? Because in my mind, other than the staff that's being paid to run the authority, everything is privatized. So can you elaborate on that for me?
Well, I think one of the alternatives that exist out there is that you wouldn't have a solid waste authority. That being one of the alternatives that's out there. So that would be, the remaining 5% would be privatized at that point. And I think the point of it is to actually look at that and see if that's a possibility on it. But I don't think status quo, and I think the feedback from the board as a whole, not necessarily unanimously, but as a whole, was to status quo was not acceptable as a solution.
I thought that it was to look at all of the options, was the discussion, to look at all of the options of what would happen if the city had it, what would happen if the county had it, and I guess for me, the assumption would be you would also operate with the analysis of what status quo is. Mm-hmm. So you would have to do an analysis across the board of what it meant. But by narrowing it to this discussion, I'm afraid that the consumers that are going to get the information are not going to be able to have a full picture of what the options are and what the future of garbage and trash and recycling and that entire service could look like in our community.
Could you share with the council and the audience why, what's the line of thinking, why the status quo is not acceptable? I haven't been following your meeting, so I'm not really clear why you say that.
I think some of it is the finances, that in terms of the cost ongoing with where it's at right now, and the question of whether you need the existing structure as it is right now. And that's one of the questions that's come up. But
could you be more specific? The finances, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, right now, we've got additional overhead that's built into solid waste right now, as well as a bureaucracy that's there, and it's a question of whether you need it or not.
Right, and the only way you can get
we will open it up for public comment.
The only way you can get to that question is through an outside analysis, is through, if you're going to look at one piece of it, you have to be able to answer the entire question, so you have to look at the entire continuum. You can't, in my opinion, if you only want to look at privatization as the option, then you have skipped over all of the other possible options that are out there, and I'm suggesting that if you are going to do an analysis, you do an analysis across the board. And I also want to add that in the analysis, it's imperative that there be a plan on the responsibility of local entities, of local counties and local cities in their relationship to their waste plan on how it affects the state regulations and rules. Because those two plans have to be developed. Currently, we have one plan that holds that development, but both entities would have to develop their own. Is there a cost there? I don't know. Is there a cost in relationship to what would happen with the landfill? I don't know. But that's the thing that has to be, all of that analysis has to be put together with all of the options, and then we weigh in on which one we like. But you can't jump to Z without going through the alphabet.
My concern is that, you know, I sat on the solid waste board for about 4 years, I think. And I actually sat on the committee with Martha that went through the entire process to create the new franchise agreement. I felt like we spent more time, you know, vetting that, going through that process than I have on any other issue. And I'm the first to admit I'm not a liberal person. I'm not a right, you know, conservative either. I'm down the middle of the road, and I've always felt like there were things that the Solid Waste Authority did that I didn't really agree with. I always felt like there were some things we could do better, but I also learned through the 4 years of sitting on that board that a lot of the things we were doing were the right things to do. So I feel like we have really good rates for our ratepayers. I was just in Eureka the other day, and you know, they're still driving the Recology trucks that are, you know, look like the old Delmart disposal trucks. The garbage cans on the side of the streets in the city limits are yellow and brown and gray and look like they're 50 years old. You know, there's a lot of things going on that I feel like, wow, I come home to my community and we look pretty darn good in comparison, because I think that the board really did a great job of securing some of those things through that process. If you guys want to look at something, I'm completely 100% supportive of that, but I think there needs to be a plan. I think, you know, I am concerned about constituents having their rates raised. If the rates are controlled by a completely private, you know, group of people instead of the process that we've gone to, there's, you know, Prop 218 issues that will affect that. And the other thing is to do this in depth of a study, which I think it does need to be in depth, because, you know, even if the status quo isn't acceptable, it's not too bad of a deal where we're at right now. But the fee that it's going to cost us to analyze this, and who's going to pay for that. So do you guys have a business plan or any kind of a budget for the study to
I think the point of just bringing it up now is to get feedback from both boards as to which direction to go in. That's the primary focus of it. And I can tell you on the board side, status quo of, and I think more of the infrastructure is set up for it more so than the individual RFPs that have been put out, is one of the big concerns.
So what happens to the contract that we have with Recology if your study said that we should privatize the staff?
That would be one of the things the study would deal with. Sure. Supervisor Hemmingson and Supervisor Gillen.
Yeah, I don't think that anybody wants to see services change the way they are. The services that we have are high quality, good services. I think the main question here is, are we getting a cost benefit for the ratepayers out of having the bureaucracy grown to the extent that it's grown? You know, by expanding its powers continually, those have been reined back in a little bit now, which I think makes it better. I think the ordinances now that are in place, or that are soon to be in place, hopefully, by the city and the county, are where they should be. The jurisdictions for ordinances in the city should be controlled by the city. Ordinances in the county should be controlled by the county. There should not be, in this particular case, I don't think there should be one entity that is represented by less than a quorum of the city and the county council, by the city and the county supervisors, should be able to pass an ordinance that crosses jurisdictions. We've fixed that little problem. I think there's more problems to go. But are we getting a cost benefit? Is this bureaucracy necessary? That's what I want to know. I don't have a problem with the contracts for Hambros Waste Solution Group. I don't have a problem with the contracts that Recology have. I think that there could possibly be a reduction in rates for all of the users, and especially for businesses. I mean, ratepayers that are residential, they didn't see much of an impact, if any, maybe even a lowering of rates. Businesses saw a considerable raising of rates, even though there are some ways of reducing those rates. The overall end result was a cost increase. So if you have to separate your garbage, that takes personnel. Whatever you have to do to reduce those rates still may cost you money. I just think we should look at this as is there a cost benefit to this bureaucracy that we've created? I don't think that's too hard to figure out a study to do that.
Supervisor Gill.
Yes, thank you, Chair Sullivan. I think what's being lost here is the greater good for Del Norte County. We have a level of bureaucracy which I happen to believe has outlived its usefulness. I see that commercial rates have been dramatically risen. Who pays for that? Who pays for a commercial business who raises its rates and passes it on to the consumer who uses that business? So true, the local rates for local users may be static, but someone is paying for this level of bureaucracy, and it's substantial. As far as the what would supplant a replaced Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority is we are looking at enhancing our code enforcement department to do the job that is currently being done now. I see the Solid Waste Management Authority is essentially doing collection work, collecting monies and then divvying them out. And I think we need to take a hard look at what is best for the consumers here in Del Norte County.
Councilmember Hawley.
Yes, thank you. For those of you who maybe saw the last solid waste management meeting, I spoke out. We had the discussion about hiring a consultant, what we should maybe do to take another look at this. And I was in favor of a broader-based question. I was less enthusiastic about just going toward privatization, but maybe there's a better way we can do business, and we can certainly take a look at that. But I think there are some real foundational questions that we need to have answered before we go out, if we go out, because we're going to have people just spinning their wheels due to legal questions that I think that probably need to be answered before we proceed.
Supervisor McClure.
Yeah, I'm going to go again at this, that 90%, and it may be a little higher than 90%, of all dollars spent in relationship to trash and companies who deal with the trash, the 4 companies that we have are private companies. It's not a public company. Now, to say that commercial rates went up, they did, and there was considerable discussion with the Solid Waste Task Force of community members working very diligently and saying, you know, we want the people of this community who are living on fixed incomes, who are using the service to continue to use the service, and we wanted to be extremely careful that their rates were not supplanting rates for commercial businesses. That yes, they do pass their cost on, but they pass their cost on when they use a FedEx to deliver their goods to their business. So that is part of the model of business. But the other part is that if people remember, the school district, threw its hands in the air and said, oh my gosh, we can't support these outrageously high rates. Well, they reduced their solid waste bill by between 1/2 and 3/4 of the cost, because they went to Recology, they found out what they needed to do, they were a proactive business, and they were extremely successful in lowering their rates. So our commercial users, if you go into a commercial building and you don't see the recycling bin there, you need to go in and ask the person, why are you passing that cost on to me? Why are you not using that recycling bin? Why are you not participating in all of the activity that can happen in this community? I'd also like to point out that part of what this service is that every consumer, every user of the system, of the citizens of this community, get to have 2 pickups a year that are called their white goods, their big goods. They get to pick up either a mat, they can call up Recology and say, you know, I've got this old mattress that needs to go, and they come and they pick it up, and there's no additional charge on your bill. That's the kind of stuff that this oversight does, because I can tell you that that's not an offer in Brookings, that's not an offer in Humboldt County, and we have the lowest rates. And it's because there's been hard work. Now, to say it's been outlived and there's going to be some way that you're going to save the 10% that's the oversight, and the 10% that is the oversight is also used to monitor the landfill. The 10% that's the oversight is also used to do hazardous waste cleanups. So it's not just a bureaucracy, it's a service that we are enjoying in this community, and it's something that is working, and it's working very, very well. And if we're going to take a look at to improve it or change it, that analysis needs to be part of what you're going to look at.
I still...
This is just a little thing that I've learned at the Coastal Commission, that if you're happy about something and you just do this, it keeps the meeting moving. And if you're not happy, you can put your thumbs down, but it keeps the meeting moving. Thank you.
Bringing it back to the 10% overhead, I wonder what the administrative percentage is for, say, the county or the city or any private business. I'm guessing it's much higher than 10%. Most grants allow about a 15% administrative overhead. So I think that we have a terrific staff at the Solid Waste Authority, and they are not top-heavy, and they're not overstaffed. In fact, the Solid Waste Authority works bare bones minimum staffing. So I still don't get the dissatisfaction with the overhead issue.
I guess one of the things that I had is the last 3 years of audits showed a net deficit with that organization. And as one of the few organizations in the community, as a business owner, you can't just jack up your fees to cover costs. And that's what the authority finally did to get their books in order. But they had 3 years of net deficit, and that was not brought to anybody's attention. And that's a government agency. I mean, you can say it's not taxpayer funded, but it is. It's ratepayer funded, and nobody has an option of using any other facility. There is not a competitive situation there. So it's a monopoly, which there really was nowhere else for people to. So in that type of situation, you've got a financial issue that, to me, the answer is not just to raise fees all the time. There's other things that need to be looked at. So
Can I ask you for clarification on that? Am I on?
I'm glad this is turning into a Coastal Commission meeting. Thank you for bringing that up. That's awesome.
It's just a trick of how they keep it going.
I'm just curious what you mean by a monopoly, because we did go out to an RFP process for the contracts that we
It's
ended up
a
with.
franchise agreement. They're the only provider of garbage, or the transfer site is it. You can't go anywhere else. That makes it a monopoly. Within Delaware County, there's only one place to go.
Right.
So
No,
it's
I
a
agree.
government-granted monopolies or a franchise.
But it's through a private company.
If I could just make a point, all of you that were doing this or applauding, obviously don't have a business. I do have a recycle bin. I do have the same amount of collection. I had a 2-yard bin, now I have 2 1-yard bins. It costs me more. And not only does it cost me more from the garbage collection agency, but it costs me more in what I have to do it. I don't mind doing that. I don't have a problem with separating the recyclables and putting them in there, but it still costs me more. So you can applaud because you're all residential customers and you think that's all fine and dandy. The price increases were not fairly distributed the way I think they were before. So, and some people might say that the residential was subsidizing the businesses. I don't think that was true. So anyway, I just think that the bureaucracy that we've created, like I said before, is gotten too big, too fast, and it needs to be looked at to be reined back in. That was my comment.
One thing that you said is correct is that the businesses do pay a higher percentage than residents. And I remember that specific part of the negotiation. And originally, they wanted the residents to pay more than the businesses, if I remember correctly. And we didn't think that that should happen. So then they brought back another model where the businesses paid more, but it was substantially higher. And we, negotiated that to come down. And so it wasn't just we didn't just accept the first, model that was presented to us. It was a negotiation, and, maybe we look at that model again.
I also think that on that model, what happened with businesses that hadn't happened before is that businesses were then allowed, in the new service, businesses can go down to a residential size can if that's what they need. Where before a commercial business had to go with, I think was it a yard or 2 yard? It was a 2 yard. Was it?
1 yard.
A 1 yard. They had to have a 1 yard dumpster if they were a commercial enterprise. And when you maybe cut hair for a living, and your salon, you need your commercial, but you're not going to fill that up. And so there are businesses that, yes, they don't pay more anymore because they were able to move down the waste stream to actually have the size of container that they needed for their business and not be locked in as if they were a business that was going to do at least a yard dumpster.
Or
I
they
think
can
the
sell
most
fall.
I think the most productive thing you can do, if really the biggest problem is the residential versus business rates, is to have that model looked at again, because I'm sure that if Recology still gets the same amount of money, they don't care who pays what.
Supervisor Gitlin.
Yeah, there's some factual information which is being left out here, and let's just talk about the closed landfill just for a moment. Presently, today, May 21st, 2013, we do not have, neither the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Waste Authority or Del Norte County have an active insurance policy should there be an environmental catastrophe. You should know that right now. Now, the Solid Waste Management Authority is looking into this, but right now, if there were an earthquake and there was an environmental disaster and it went into our water table, we would be on the hook, Del Norte County. Now, how can that be fixed? An insurance policy. It'll run anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 a year, it just depends. But these are issues that are under the purview of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Waste Authority. And when they don't do that, when they don't cover these things, you are all on the hook. So you people are going like this, or whatever you're doing with your hands, you need to know all the facts. Now, at this time, I'd like to ask City Attorney Black, you had sent me an email that was confidential. Now, I don't want to compromise anything. Are you in a position to discuss the Costa Mesa case? Yes. If you would, and then I would like to comment on it, how I don't think it's analogous to, as I read it, and I read the opinion on it, but I would like you to tell the audience here what the Costa Mesa case is all about.
Well, first of all, let me poll the members of the Solid Waste Management Board, because I sent it to you as a member of that board. Do you? Sure, I'd like to hear it. Yeah. Okay. So the Costa Mesa case is a case that's currently active in the courts. The Court of Appeals down in Southern California rendered an opinion that upheld a preliminary injunction stopping the city of Costa Mesa from privatizing a whole array of city services. And a preliminary injunction is just what it says. It's not a final resolution or outcome of the case. But basically what it interpreted in upholding the preliminary injunction were a couple of government code sections that restrict the ability of a city to privatize an array of government services. And the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority operates under a joint powers agreement that says it will live by and operate by city rules. And so as the JPA is currently written, I interpret this case as being relevant, not necessarily to the part of the Solid Waste Management Authority services that involves the landfill, because I think that that is a specialized function to take samples, to get them analyzed, and to report those results to the state on a periodic basis as we are required to do. I think it's very common for cities and others to contract that service out to engineering firms and other environmental firms. But when I look at the structure of what the Solid Waste Management Authority does at the transfer station, i.e. the gate, the weighing and the collection and the bookkeeping and accounting, I think that service is affected directly by the Costa Mesa case. And I could be wrong. I mean, obviously the Costa Mesa case isn't dealing with our situation. I also think that as far as the management of the Solid Waste Authority is concerned, I think you could privatize that, because I don't think that is affected by the Costa Mesa case. So I think the part that is affected is kind of the heart of, and actually involves the most employees of, the Solid Waste Management Authority, and that's the gate and the bookkeeping and those functions that are, call them more line functions. They're routine functions. They're not specialty functions. So just to summarize, the Costa Mesa case, which by the way was just decided pretty recently, I think it's August, if I remember correctly, 2012. I think to summarize what it's saying is that cities are empowered to contract for specialty services, specialized services, services requiring special skills. And what they mean by that is attorneys, engineers, not to blow my own horn, but engineers, attorneys, accountants, public health officials, those kinds of things. But people that are operating a weigh station and collecting money, that's not a specialty service. So what the case is saying, and I think that part of it pretty clear, is you can't privatize services unless they're specialized services.
Well, I want to just pick up what you said since I have the floor, and I want to just finish off. How would the employees of the current Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority be impacted if they were enveloped into a new structure where they became, let's say, county employees? Would there be any damages?
No, that would not be privatizing.
Okay.
Privatizing, and the way that I interpreted your meaning and the way that I interpret the Costa Mesa case would be finding a private company, and maybe the private company would actually hire those same people. That would be an option, but finding a private company to bring them onto a private payroll and dissolving those public jobs. This case was not, by the way, this is not the outcome of the case is not something that I would have known or expected. It just so happened that, it's kind of interesting, so happened that I went to a city attorney conference in Napa last week or the week before, and they actually had an entire seminar about this case and the meaning of it. So it was something that came to my attention through that avenue, and as I was listening to the seminar or the presentation, a light went off. This may affect, what you're talking about is by way of privatization. That's why the memo I sent you was titled a cautionary memo, because I'm not saying you cannot do this, forget it, don't talk about it anymore. I'm saying this is something to think about. This is something that may be an impediment.
Well, just in closing, I would say that it's very curious that these articles that are in our triplicate, the Coastal Voices, the letters to the editor, even your series of letters are coming in this 11th hour and 59 minutes, as if to say, you know, you better watch out. If you withdraw from the JPA, you're going to get sued. I mean, it's a very clear message to me that all these red flags are going up, and we're discussing it at this point. I think it's highly suspicious to me that all this is happening in this very late hour. So having said that, I'll defer to you.
Well, two things, Supervisor. I'm happy to show you the agenda of the training, the city attorney training, and it's right there. But the second thing is, the term you just used, withdraw, as I interpret that, that would be either the city or the county withdrawing. To me, that's a whole separate subject. That is not privatizing necessarily. It could lead to that. It could lead to a very different kind of dissolution of the authority. What you said, if these employees come on and become county employees, I don't think that raises the Costa Mesa issue at all. I think it's very much a separate matter.
Mr. Black, I do have a similar question on that, because I did ask of Ms. Rice, or Mrs. Rice at the last meeting too, is one of the requests as a board member of the Solid Waste Authority is what is the process for one entity, city, county, whoever, to pull out of the authority, and what the legal proceeding is. Because it may not be a privatization, like you're saying. The option may be it's a partial governmental without near the level of bureaucracy that's there now. But I understood you guys had a conflict that you couldn't answer that, and that to me didn't make any sense.
No, I didn't. I actually heard that part of the discussion. I didn't attend the whole meeting. I was only there for about 20 minutes, but I happened to be there for that 20 minutes. I think what Ms. Rice was saying, and I agree with it, is that it would be a potential conflict for us to give advice as to the effects of withdrawal.
Except though, but...
And the main effect, let's be honest about it, the main effects would be what happens to legal liability and responsibility for the landfill, and who takes over the necessary monitoring of the landfill. And two, what would be the legal effect of dissolving the authority on the ownership of the transfer station? Because the county owns the land, if I remember correctly, but the question of how did this financing arrangement with the iBank affect the lease back, the financial obligations around the transfer station? I think that for us to give advice on that subject to the authority might be exposing the advice, because we're not going to talk out of both sides of our mouth. We're going to give, if we did, we'd give the same advice, would be exposing the advice that we're giving to the city council in closed session. That's the problem. If you want to know about the process, I can tell you about the process right now, is you just need 3 votes on the Board of Supervisors. You take a vote, you send a note or a letter to the Solid Waste Management Authority, and it's dissolved. It's gone.
30 days.
There's a
180-day wind down.
There's a 180-day wind down period, but once that vote is taken by the board, I think it's done. Now, I think during that 6 months you might be able to take it back, but a joint powers authority is simply a partnership between 2 government entities. The only main qualification is that you both have to have the power to do the task of that joint authority. And so it's dissolved in the same fashion that a business partnership would be dissolved. You have 2 attorneys, they're practicing law together. One says, you know what, not working for me. You shake hands, you go separate ways. Same thing with this. That's the process. Now, the 6 months, obviously, there's a winding down. I mean, you've got employees, you've got represented employees, you've got issues. For example, who's responsible, if you dissolve the authority, who's responsible for all the accumulated vacation and sick leave that all those employees have? And I know from experience, because my wife is the head of First Five, that it's probably going to be the county. Because that's what happened to her when her organization picked up a county employee they brought over vacation. And there was no funding, to pay that off, so.
Supervisor McClure, thank you.
And Bob, I recognize that the process, step A of the process is that one entity can unilaterally withdraw. But when that entity, according to the current, to the agreement, when that entity withdraws, that entity leaves the assets to the other entity. Isn't that correct?
You guys can all read the agreement. Your attorney can read the agreement.
Well, okay, Gretchen.
I just don't want to go there.
Gretchen, if we unilaterally withdraw, doesn't the contract not say that the assets of the organization remain with the entity that stayed?
The contract, the JPA agreement states that the assets will remain with the authority if the authority continues to exist. The question is whether or not the authority will continue to exist if the county withdraws and there are no associate members.
It's a slippery slope that if you move in that direction and you don't have those answers, it could cost the county, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And that's why when I say you have to have, it brings it full circle of why you have to take the continuum and do the analysis across the entire board of what are the outcomes. And I understand that we tried to do that internally, and it wasn't successful. But we could try to do it with a separate entity that comes in and does the analysis, because there was a lack of trust on both sides of the discussion. But for us, the county, I would urge us not to go down that street that could possibly put the entire assets, because the transfer station is extremely valuable. And it is I just want to press again that if you want to do it, if we want to look and see what the changes could be, and you want to have somebody do it from the outside, I'm fine with that. But I hope that level heads prevail, and that we do our fiduciary responsibility and take great care in protecting our interest and protecting our interest that is currently covered with this JPA at the landfill.
So Chair Sullivan?
Yeah.
You're looking for direction from both boards to take back to the solid waste board?
Yeah.
And will it be the solid waste board that pays for the study?
That would be the first option, I would say. Any other comments before we open
Well,
up public?
I just have to say, it's real easy to put out the doom and gloom that, this could cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, and that's not the direction that we want to go. No, neither board wants to go there. But the other side of that is that it could save both entities hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So, there's both sides of this. It's easy to throw out, the big threat of, oh gosh, the doom and gloom, the sky is falling. That makes it real easy to say. To put the fear out there that this is an organization that we cannot do without. Well, that's a bunch of baloney. The truth is, this could save both entities hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
So let's find out by doing
I don't have a problem with it.
I don't have a problem with that either. I do think, what the JPA does is pledge the revenue from Solid Waste Authority towards liability to landfill. That's it. So there is, there was supposed to be an insurance policy originally. There has not been an insurance policy. There's been no reserve fund to protect us in the event of an incident at the landfill. Those are things I would hope the study, as you mentioned, begins to put money off to the side, or at least gets a policy in place to protect that liability. I'm sorry, Supervisor McClure, did you have a comment? Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
Any other comments before we open up for public comment? That's a big no. Councilman Gass, no? Okay. All right, we will, we're going to open it for public comment at this point. Due to the number of people here that are to speak on this subject, if you are in agreement with the person that spoke before you or the other, you could say, I agree with that person, and we'll try and get as many people as possible. Otherwise, we will be here till midnight. So we do want to make sure everybody gets their public comment, but if you're hammering a point, try and do it quickly. Mr. Miles.
Well, I went to the dollar store to see if I could find a soccer ball, and I couldn't find one. I personally think it's time to end this game that was played by an ad hoc committee because Mr. Dillard didn't like something. A 10-member board made up of the city and the county couldn't come to any resolution. That took a whole year. Now you're starting anew with a new 5-member board with a public member. I'm going to give you a little history because I don't have a lot of confidence in a lot of stuff. Martha's been here for a long time. She knows the real reason why the Joint Powers Authority between the city and the county was formed. We had somebody running the dump that didn't know what they were doing, and the state started to fine us. We had to clean up our act. We were polluting the environment. So we formed the Joint Powers Authority. We had the landfill. I remember coming to meetings and Jack Reese and Clyde Elder wanted to build up the sites. Well, we found out that that wasn't realistic, and I got appointed the first task force, and everybody, Clark was on that, and we signed for the loan to build the transfer station because some people that lived on Old Mill Road didn't want trucks driving up and down by their house. So instead of using the property we had, we gave Hishnu a lot of money. Well, we got a beautiful transfer station out of the deal, and we allow Mr. Sparrow to pick up my trash today, and we allow self-haulers. The system works. The only problem is maybe the city should have taken old Jack Reese advice and done mandatory pickup in the city of Crescent City so we would have less blight.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Could you wrap it up?
I don't trust the county in doing anything. You screwed it up to begin with, and you're going to screw it up again.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, Irene Hines, Crescent City resident, former county, city council member, current board member on the much beloved North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board that actually holds your permit to the landfill that you keep talking about. And I would just like to say, I'm not representing the board, but I will say that I've sat in a number of meetings, and now I have seen how it is done in the North Coast region, from Sonoma, Santa Rosa, big landfills all over. Who gets 4 stars, 5 stars for staff relations and the ability to do what they're doing and doing it correctly? That is the staff here on your JPA. They work very well with water quality. We have a very good relationship. That says a lot. I think you all know that. I just wanted to say, you keep throwing this bureaucracy word around like it's a bad word. Well, first of all, you're all bureaucrats. I'm a bureaucrat, right? And I think it's a good thing. It's about transparency. It's about the ability for public comment. It's about dotting i's and crossing t's that I cannot be assured if it's 100% privatized. I like the fact that there's oversight. And if you all have individual problems with the JPA, I also say, that's your problem. You're sitting on the board. If we don't have insurance, why don't we have insurance? I'm asking you as board members. It lays on you. Mr. Sullivan, really, you said that for 3 years we were in a deficit and nobody knew about it. Well, your job was to tell us that that was happening.
I wasn't on the board.
Well, but you're on the county. You knew about it. And that's what we want to hear. So what I'm saying is, do your due diligence. Stand up and do what's right at those meetings. Read your packets, read your agendas, read everything that's in front of you. And I think it will be done well. I just, again, I want to thank you. As bureaucrats, I know you're not making anything. You know, this is basically a volunteer job, and you're here late at night, and you're listening to all of us, and I really do appreciate it. And I just want to say to you, I believe in the JPA. Keep it just where it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name's Jill Dovry. I'm a resident of Del Norte County. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak on the matter of local public control of solid waste management. I have been a self-hauler customer of the Waste Authority for over 20 years. During this time, I have noticed vast improvements in how garbage and recycling is handled. No longer do I have to worry about falling into the waste bin at the landfill or getting soaked by the rain while emptying my load. The new transfer station is very well designed, very clean and safe to use, and the rates are also very reasonable. I'm very glad previous boards of the authority preserved the right for people like me to continue to self-haul my own garbage, rather than forcing everyone to sign up for collection. It saves me a lot of money, and I don't have to pay for service I don't need. So why have we come to the point of this meeting to discuss dissolving the authority of our local government to oversee garbage service? How can you, as local elected officials, seriously consider this? Isn't this your job, to manage essential public services? Is it reasonable to have no public oversight over multi-million-dollar contracts to private companies? How could you even think of giving away our public facility, the transfer station? Are you prepared to take back the over $2 million liability of the landfill onto your own balance sheets? If you privatize, are you prepared to pay out of your own city and county budgets for all these legally required tasks that aren't covered by the garbage contracts, like meeting recycling mandates, protecting water, land, and other resources, monitoring and maintaining the closed landfill, dealing with illegal dumping, abandoned vehicles, etc., and providing proper disposal for items that are banned from regular garbage services, like needles, batteries, electronics, and many other household items. Right now, if you keep the authority in place, all these tasks are handled and paid for without touching either of your budgets. You already have the power as potential board members on the authority to set disposal rates, to determine all policies, control costs, and set service standards. You have the ability to make changes, like add insurance, with full consideration for the impacts on the public you were elected to serve. Even before the authority was formed, there was a public and private partnership to manage the landfill. When that system was found to be deficient, the state didn't go after the private operator. They went after the county for mismanagement, because ultimately local government is held accountable for basic health and safety programs. At that time, the city and the county joined together to start cooperatively fixing the problems through this joint powers authority. It meets the goals of shared responsibility without duplication of services or staff. Don't mess with success. If you privatize, you lose control over what is your own responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening, I'm Sally Roy, and I live in the county, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak before the supervisors and the city council members. I'm speaking as a private citizen. I'm currently concerned as a homeowner about the value of my residence, should we ever decide to sell. Right now, I'm watching the progress of what's happening with the hospital. If the hospital's downsized, I see that as a serious concern in terms of my property value and the viability of how people want to move to Del Norte County. Similarly, I look at the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority as enhancing my property value in terms of reducing blight, providing a quality service, and seeking to find the best way to serve the public, which I don't believe would be the first priority of a private company. So I appreciate your attention, and I encourage you to consider continuing the Solid Waste Management Authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Patricia Black. I live in the city. That means I also live in the county. For almost a year now, I've been an appointed member by the city and by the county of the Solid Waste Advisory Task Force, so I've had the opportunity to learn about this whole issue, and I'm still learning. During this time, and even before that, I've been really impressed by the work that the Solid Waste Authority does in educating the community about ways to recycle and appropriate use of reducing and so on. Now I've learned that they actually do a whole lot more than that. They get around the back doors so that now we can drop off our batteries, we can return our old carpet. They effectively do things that a private company perhaps would not be in that company's best interest, since it reduces the amount of garbage that's collected. It is for the greater good of the community, as Mr. Gitlin mentioned, and that's what I would totally support, is the greater good. I am a proud civil servant. I've also been married to people in business, so I can see both sides of the picture, but I believe that there is a place for government, and that is oversight. And so I agree very much with the prior speakers on that issue. I believe that when there's nothing wrong, you don't fix it. And I frankly don't see why the status quo is not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Henry. I'm a county resident. I'm retired, but in my previous life, I was a county supervisor for 8 years for Mendocino County. I served at the beginning of AB 939. I served on the Mendocino County Solid Waste Authority as it was formed and as it did its job. And I was very proud of the work that we did. It's continued under the same director, Mike Sweeney. I talked to him yesterday to get an update, because I have to say, I never thought I'd be involved in solid waste again, but here I am interested. So we talked a bit about current things, and he also said, he said that this staff is one of the best that he's ever seen. He said the grants that they bring to this county are just amazing, and he's a little jealous. So I think you do have a wonderful staff, and you need to really be cautious what you do with them. To kind of update myself about recent things, I did do some research online, and actually there's a lot of information about privatization versus public or private and public partnerships. And one thing I found is in a book that's recently actually been published, it stated that privatization is more a political act than an economic act. So it's important for government to consider the big picture before proceeding with an action that will likely change their entire operation. So what's the big picture for Mendocino, sorry, I'm back in the old groove, for Del Norte County? You know, I've heard some statements made, and I think in the press, that since the landfill is closed, the transfer station built, well, you know, we don't have anything much else to do. There's no role for the JPA. Well, you couldn't be more wrong. Other than monitor the old landfill and fulfill other oversight roles, the JPA has a very active role in planning for the future. I imagine you all have heard about AB 341 and the new goals for recycling, 75%. That's a pretty major step up, and someone's going to have to do the planning to meet those goals. And and I think that is a role for the JPA. As far as business, it's really interesting. The recycling goals, many counties and I think the state overall are over 50%. But that's been met primarily by private persons, by households. Business has not stepped in yet with recycling, and so they are going to be looked at to meet some of the new goals. So I think, Mr. Hemmingson, business is going to have to really participate in meeting the new goals. So anyway, that's my bit. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be back in Del Norte County. I grew up here, and so I'm really glad to be back. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Julie Bayon. I'm a county resident, and I'm a conservative. Ronald Reagan's one of my heroes. However, I am concerned that there's this push to privatize when you already have most of it being run by private businesses. I actually don't get that. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because Ronald Reagan didn't say do away with all government. He said make it be efficient. And we need government oversight because we know businesses sometimes can do things that are not in the interest of all. It's to pursue profit. So it seems like you have this wonderful balance of business gets to do a lot of what business can do well, and yet you still have the oversight of it, and you're representing us. So that's the voice of the people through their representatives. It sounds like a really good deal. I'm also concerned about the use of the word bureaucracy, because as a conservative, I don't really like bureaucracy, but I do know in the modern world that we have to have management. People have to run things. Things don't run themselves. A dump doesn't run itself. The garbage collection doesn't run itself. And here you have these talented people doing a really good job with a lean staff. I don't understand why you want to change that. I want to hear what the problem is before somebody says, let's look for a solution. That's the part that's not making sense to me right now. If somebody said the way we're doing it now costs 3 times as much as this alternative over here, I'd say, oh, I'm interested. Where's the alternative? What can you tell us that might work better and still the people have representation through you to do the oversight? I'm an English teacher, so I'm going to say my closing comments in my best grammar. If it ain't broke, it don't need to be fixed.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Ruth Rhodes. I'm a professor of English and a resident of Greater Crescent City, and a mother of 2 solid waste creators. One is named Henry, he's 5, and the other is Theo, he's 2. I'm concerned about government waste. I don't like my tax dollars squandered. It started out as a good idea, exploring the dissolution or further privatization of the Solid Waste Authority, but now it's just become, for a citizen like myself, who's just average and not really working for any of these entities or connected to them, it just seems bizarre and suspicious. An ad hoc committee met for 18 months, and they didn't recommend dissolution or further privatization. A 10-member board met last year, all of last year, and they didn't recommend dissolution or privatization. In fact, no one has ever really come up with a good reason to privatize or dissolve the Solid Waste Authority. Although I keep hearing that, I hear that there's a big bureaucracy, but I think that's like 2 managers and some cashiers. That's not very big. So if you want to continue studying the matter and possibly allocate more money, I just feel it's become a colossal waste of time, energy, and resources. Think of the amount of time you have already spent on this issue and the amount of money that actually represents. Even just Bob Black's time on this is probably equals all of the Solid Waste Authority together. I'm right now thinking I should just become a lawyer instead of being an English professor, but anyway. I don't understand the issue with the financing from iBank, and I don't know the tax law with respect to a private company operating the scales. But we already know that folks at the registers make a relatively low wage, so you're probably not going to save money that way. And we already know that the government must continue to oversee contractors and be responsible for public health. You can't outsource that any more than you can outsource yourselves. I bet you hadn't considered that cost savings, had you? There's a reason we need public servants in key positions, including yours. Please now act like the public servants we need you to be, instead of looking like politicians grinding axes or private business owners bemoaning the rising costs of doing business. Show us your commitment to public service, public safety, and public savings. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Andrea Wadsworth. I'm also the president of the SEIU union out at the transfer station. I just wanted to address a few things. I like to keep my job. I love my job. I love the people that come into our transfer station every day. I worked for 15 years as a cashier at Brookings Fred Meyer, and so I know how many Oregon people come down. I hear the positive, I hear the privatization up there, and because I know the people, I don't have to look at a license plate. I know the people that came through my grocery line. I know the people that have paper or plastic. So I can tell you right now, I don't have to look at their license plate where they're coming from to bring their trash. I also want to let you know that we're fast, we're efficient, we're accurate. The dogs are drooling when they're coming. They know they get treats. The kids are screaming in the back. They know they're happy to come. And I want you guys to understand that we like our jobs. I also want you to understand that we save money at our transfer station. They come down 28 miles to save money. It's accurate. We have scales. They don't up there. They don't measure loads. They're private, and the businesses up there are paying. And the residents are paying even more. You think your garbage is expensive because you're a business? Be a resident up there. You'll be spending it on fuel to come see us to drop off your trash. I also want to let you guys know that as a union, it's very difficult for you guys to privatize us. So I want you to look at that in all aspects. And I just want to say I really love my job, and I've invited you guys before to come visit, and I haven't seen one of you guys in my booth. Talk to the people. We are your voices, and you would understand what we do for this community and how we save. We have a lot of people that have dropped their collections to self-haul to save money. And you guys need to look at how you can save money by recycling. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Norma Williams, Vice President of the Del Norte County Employees Association, SEIU Local 10-1, and I am here in support of and in solidarity with the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority Employees Union. We have several labor concerns. One is that this persistent drive to privatize the Solid Waste Management Authority is a move to get rid of the union. A not too subtle case of union busting, but union busting nonetheless. There is a labor contract between the authority and the union. The authority has not submitted any proposal or held discussions with the employees' union regarding privatization of the transfer station. We believe that this is in violation of the Myers-Milius-Brown Act, as well as the labor contract. MMBA states that both management and labor must meet when there is a proposed change in hours, wages, and conditions of employment. Privatization threatens current jobs, union jobs, and from what I've read in the papers, along with personal experience, highly qualified, courteous, and beneficial jobs at that. You had your studies, and they've all come to the same conclusion. The authority and its employees are doing an exemplary job for the residents of Del Norte as well as those of Curry County who utilize our transfer station. What you continually choose to ignore is that there has not been one single recommendation from those studies for dissolution or privatization of the transfer station. Why is that? Why try to fix it if it's not broken? There are other problems with your zeal to continue this strange course of action. There are legal limitations and restrictions on what can or cannot be privatized. In the end, can you do this? And then there are the rates. Curry County privatized their station and rates went up. Our county's transfer station has the lowest rates in the area. Any wonder why the residents of Curry County use ours instead of theirs on a daily basis? In the end, without any study of a problem or consideration of alternatives, what guarantee will you give Del Norte residents that this will make things better rather than worse? And what guarantees can you give to the employees that are doing this work and doing it well, that you are not just trying to sell their current living wage union jobs to the lowest bidders? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, Craig Strong, county resident. The previous speakers have really elucidated all I would want to say very clearly, except the study analysis that is being discussed when you open the meeting to look at the best alternatives. As Ms. McClure pointed out, that's going to be expensive. You need professionals to do the analysis, to get all the results, do cost-benefit feasibility studies. That's going to cost way past $50,000. I don't know how much, but let's just use that as a minimum. Who's going to pay for that? Public, right? We don't want to pay for it. May I suggest that none of the public wants this to go on, and that your action item on this meeting be to cancel further pursuit of dissolution of the JPA. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Patty McCleary, and I live in the county. And Supervisor Sullivan, I'm one of your people. One of the things I did when I learned that discussion of privatization was calendared for this event is I did a little survey already. And here's what I found out. I could save us a lot of time and money. What I found out in consultation with ratepayers in Humboldt County served by privatized companies in Fortuna and McKinleyville and the publicly managed entity in Arcata is I learned hands down, if you are served by a publicly managed entity, your rates are lower. So there you go, keep rates low, skip the whole discussion and analysis of privatization. I also wanted to add a couple of comments. First, let me say I agreed with everything people have said so far, but I want to really drill down into this concept of privatization. Every now and then there are words in circulation that mean a lot, and it sounds really neat, privatization. But what it means in this instance, when you look at the remaining component of the Solid Waste Authority that you might privatize, what you're seeking, what you're contemplating, what you're discussing is privatizing the brains and technical expertise that are essential to critical oversight. And I would put forward that just as you can't privatize Jay Serena's job, just as you cannot privatize the fire chief, you really have to keep your arms around and have that expertise on your team accountable to you. And you don't get that when you privatize and outsource the entire contract. So I wanted to put that forward as something for your consideration. So in summary, public management of utilities is most accountable to the ratepayers. You don't get that through a privatization scenario. And the regulations that the Solid Waste Management Authority are dealing with, don't kid yourselves, they are complex, and implementation of the effective oversight just can't be done. It can't be outsourced. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts.
All right, thank you. Next speaker.
should actually go through the clerk's office,
Okay.
not through us. So if you'd hand this to the clerk. And actually, we actually like to read things in advance so we can listen to you also.
Well, next time, Richard, I promise you I'm going to send this to you in advance.
Thank you.
Okay, you're on your clock, so.
Okay, I'm on the
You-
clock.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you. What is that saying about government? Sometimes it's messy, but it's necessary. So, you know, I really enjoyed the opportunity to sit here and listen to you all talking about this, and I think some very good comments were made. And actually, Kelly, I'm sorry that, you know, after the big investment of time that you put in on this subject, you don't get to continue, because, you know, that's what it's all about, is getting the level of knowledge up so that people can then contribute in a meaningful way, that level of knowledge. So I'm going to speak as a private sector person. My company, Conservation Solutions, was a lead contractor to the Solid Waste Management Authority about 20 years ago. I was the lead firm in master planning for closure of the landfill, some of the permitting, as well as some of the planning for remediation of the waste discharge ponds. That's Conservation Solutions. Another one of my large clients was a very successful, still in operation, agricultural recycling service in the Sacramento Valley. I was their business licensing point. I secured all their permits for their facility. So the waste and recycling area is a subject that I'm pretty familiar with. And it's kind of in that context that I just want to share a few principles, if you could, about what we're dealing with. First of all, that the simple one, if it's not broken, hey, what are we trying to do here? So that one certainly resonates for me. Another one is certainly keeping our rates down and our service up. You know, and there's a third one, and Jerry, I want to specifically address this maybe to you and other business owners. AB 341 was previously mentioned. That bill, signed by the governor in 2011, specifically targets commercial and business sector players. And basically, when we look ahead, there's certain things that we know, and that is recycling and waste recovery will become even more focused. There will be more attention on it. That law will bring even more attention to commercial and private sector contributors, because there's a lot more that can be gained in that sector. So it's one of those things, regardless of where we come from, we can predict that. And so it's important to understand that that's going to be happening. Another observation is here in our county, where we do have a lot of public land and there are roads that can be driven out and kind of dead-ended, illegal dumping is a serious problem. Last year, with my other hat on as executive director of the Smith River Alliance, we organized a cleanup of the Smith River National Recreation Area, collected over 3,000 pounds of illegally dumped trash. What does that tell us? What it tells us is we need to make services very affordable, and if anything, we need to subsidize the rates such that people will want to go to the transfer station ahead of illegally dumping. So that's an issue for us here, but it's also an issue in Sacramento and other places. So illegal dumping.
Can I get you wrapped up? I think you've gone a minute over with the time.
Oh, I didn't hear anything.
Yeah, it didn't beep.
Okay.
So.
I just also want to say that really great experience with the Solid Waste Management Authority staff. And I do go there a lot, as a result of what we do on the National Recreation Area and public land, as well as a private person. So government oversight is good. We do need to have that. And then finally, can we say the concern about privatization, I think, is appropriate. We want to have our hands on it. We must reflect on the situation with the hospital. We want to...
I got to get you to just close up now, because it's been almost 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We look forward to watching you on this and participating when those opportunities come up.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker?
My name is Susan Calla, and I am a Del Norte resident. And I served on the solid waste task force for a couple of years after the new transfer station opened. I learned a lot about the challenges that faces the authority and what they have to do for us in managing our waste stream. I'm here today, I resonate with so many of the speakers that have gone before me, but my concern is very personal. I live downwind and very close to the closed landfill nearby. And due to the proximity of my home and property, I have a monitoring device in my backyard. Other neighbors also have devices that are monitoring their wells. I am relieved and grateful every few months when a technician from the authority comes on my property to test for emissions from the device in order to determine if there are any toxic gases that have escaped from the unlined, decaying garbage mound. Gases like methane that could dissolve and seep into our groundwater and wells, my well. Thanks to the diligence of the authority to keep me informed that the testing so far has reported only negative results for pollutants, I can sleep soundly, knowing that this level of responsibility is being carried out by the authority as part of its management in order to protect me and my property. Over the years I've lived at my home, the closed landfill property has been a magnet for illegal activity. Not only were people continuing to still bring stuff and dump them by the gates or along the road, I've had to report several fires that were set by illegal trespassers into the landfill property. Also, illegal dirt bikes and ATVs regularly cut fences on the property and ride in there to access the state park dunes that border it. Beautiful, pristine dunes with rare plants. Whenever I've had to call 911, there is a 24/7 response from either the authority staff who shows up and or gets law enforcement there almost immediately. So you can't convince me that privatizing, any kind of privatizing this kind of public scrutiny over this landfill is going to provide me with the same degree of professional and quality service, security, and vigilance that this publicly accountable authority provides for our entire community. Thank you very much.
Next speaker.
Andrew Larson with the county. Boy, I don't think the county or the city wants to privatize their responsibilities as laid out by the state of California. The difference of, and I don't think that anybody is trying to take the solid waste of Del Norte County and Crescent City and put it in private hands and just say, okay, let's go willy-nilly and we'll worry about you later. The responsibilities of the county and the city as far as the state resource code are quite clear. You're going to be there. The difference of having somebody else run something than a bureaucracy is quite clear that it can be run. I agree with Martha McClure. Things really need to be looked at. You've got an issue, and that issue is, it was a good thing when it started. Is it still a good thing, or does it need to change? Do we need something else in place that will do a more efficient job, get it done, save the ratepayers? This is a question. The county and the city will never lose their responsibility for trash. You can't privatize legal responsibility, so that the issues of everybody saying, oh boy, you just can't privatize it, we can't trust a corporation to run it. You will have oversight by a current board of supervisors and the city council. You will have government oversight. Is it the right thing? You don't know, and I thought the issue here, should you get somebody in here? We can talk about this for another 10 years and keep having the same hey, he's trying to do this, she's trying to do it. We don't know. And I guess we're not smart enough to know the correct answer. So we should get somebody to tell us what is the best way. Utilize what has been good. It's done a good job. I'm not going to tell you Kevin or anybody else hasn't done a good job. The boards have done a good job. Does things need to change? We need an opinion.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Ellie Kimbauer, and I'm a resident of the county, and I'm a psychologist with a practice in the city. And as a psychologist, we're much better at asking questions, perhaps, and listening than trying to always give the answers. And so I want to try to ask you guys 3 questions. And it's around the people, and it's around the power, and it's around the principles. And so one of my questions then with regard to the people is, how can you possibly not hear the people, your people, our people, and what we're saying in support of the wonderful people who run the authority? Secondly, power. It's like, what is this power thing that there are all these issues on, when in fact there is a clear mandate and there's a clear task and there's a diagnosis even. There's more than one here. And the analysis and the diagnosis is basically in order for people to live by these principles, and those principles have to do with supporting the current excellence of the Solid Waste Authority. So I ask you again, what do you hear the people saying? What power can you use to serve rather than to create more conflict, confusion? And what is your principle, your bottom line value and principles when it comes to managing this conflict, finding a resolution, and making a really good therapy plan, which in my estimation is to continue to support the JPA and the Solid Waste Authority. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mike Tompkins. I'm a resident of the city. I kind of have questions too. I can't understand how it could be believed that a private company that needs to make a profit beyond paying the people that do the jobs can be cheaper than just paying the people to do their jobs. I don't understand that. That's my first question. My second point would be, I haven't heard anybody speak in favor of privatizing. This entire room seems to be full of people against. I understand that when people in your positions receive one person in support or against something, they can assume that there's how many others out there in that having that same point of view. I'm wondering then, what does that mean about the communities, this entire community's point of view on this subject? I don't want to spend more money and more of your time on a subject that's had 2.5 years of study, and a final recommendation has been the same in both of them. Why are we spending time and money on a subject that has been so well closed? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Wesley Nunn, county resident. Fiduciary responsibility dictates that you consider other options. I'm a bit shocked that everyone has come up here and said, no, we don't want to consider any option. We don't want to look at anything that might improve. Now, I'm not saying there are options that will, but the refusal to look at any options, I think, is against your fiduciary responsibility. I salute those of you who are considering an independent outside agency to at least take a look at the options. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Before the next speaker, can I get just a hand raise of how many other people are going to be speaking? Or if you're not standing, then I'm assuming everyone else has spoken on this. Go ahead.
Has my 3 minutes started yet?
You're there.
Okay. First of all, I'll say that Barry Commoner said it best there in his, oh, you're going to start it over again?
No, you're
It's his 5 laws of ecology, Joe Gillespie. There is no way. There is no way. And these people have been doing such an amazing job for us trying to figure out what to do with our trash, what to do with the crap that we generate, whether from a business or from our own personal selves. I'm a self-hauler, and I'm not unhappy with the rates at all. I haven't been from the start, and I'm not unhappy with the increase. I find that hauling my recyclables pays for the fuel for me to go to the landfill. I go to the landfill less. We can recycle plastic now. I am so grateful to the authority that I can have all my bins and do all my sorting, and it costs me nothing to take care of my waste. And I'm also proud as a member of our school district to see the reduction that we've been able to do with the help of Recology and the Solid Waste Management Authority. I am not going to try to repeat everything that everyone has said. People have spoken very eloquently. I do want to say, are you guys listening? Are you listening to what the community has to tell you? I hope you are, because people have spoken, and I think that the idea of another study is ludicrous. Really? You're going to tell your people that, hey, guess what we decided? We're going to do a government study to solve our problems. Really? Another study? I can't believe it. And I want to say something that is not easy to say, but it's the truth. You guys know what this is. Mr. Sullivan answered part of my question at the very beginning when he said, this is an ongoing deal for the last couple of years, longer in some cases. This is nothing but a witch hunt. This is a witch hunt. And to go any further with any kind of a study is slimy. And the rest of you are going to have slime on you if you go any further with this. You guys need to stop this. You need to stop it right now. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in this community, and it's gone on for far too long. If you want to study something, study your airport management authority. Study your local planning commission, who regularly make the wrong suggestion that costs the public money and it costs our county money. If you want to study something, study those businesses, but leave our Solid Waste Management Authority alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Lonsdale again. I'm sorry to burden you with my thoughts. Clearly, some of you are feeling the burden more than others. I'm speaking to you as I've spoken to the Waste Management Board, as some of you know, many, many times, as a totally satisfied consumer of the residential trash pickup system. And the only sort of ancient wisdom that I would attempt to pass on to you is, first, do no harm. Other speakers have robbed me of the chance to quote my old sergeant major when he told me what I should do as a young lieutenant with something that wasn't broken. What I worry about is that getting in there and messing around with something that operates very well, for whatever motives may be there, and of course we don't know, it's clear that a majority of the Waste Management Board favors a study. And the study if it's done with a broad enough scope that it answers all of the questions and not just the questions that certain people want answered, would be very good. But I echo Supervisor Gitlin, who's my supervisor, in his thoughts about the hospital study. If you go into a study that is already cooked, that you know how it's going to turn out, and you know the answer that you want, it's not worth the effort. And so I would, with respect, would suggest that maybe the study, if it is not properly scoped, is a waste of time. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lonsdale. Next speaker.
Hello, I'm Victoria Dickey. I live in the county. It would be hard for me to find too many people here who have agreed with my position. I believe that it is your responsibility to review all of any organization that you're in charge of. It's your responsibility to me as an elector, a voter, to pass on the costs to us, but to pass on the lowest costs for accomplishing the job. I think you have a true question here as to whether or not there is a better way, a lower cost way. I don't think that any of the solid waste management that we see now would ever have been instituted when I was a child. Is it a better way? Apparently. But if we don't look at new ideas, then nothing happens that's good. With reference to whether or not your study should be wide in scope, I will leave that to you as to how wide it should be and what you think you need. But sitting here and listening, I'm believing that whatever money you spend on it probably will fall on deaf ears. I'm beginning to believe that there are people on this board who are more interested in keeping 2 members of this community employed who cost us, including benefits, approximately $250,000 a year. I think those things need to be looked into. I am a ratepayer in Brookings, Oregon at $68 for 3 months up there. You figure out whether or not. But I think that when you get all done, you will have a choice of whether or not to put in your notice to dissolve the solid waste joint powers agreement, which I would hope you don't have to do. I would hope that once the information comes in that you as a board would sit down and decide if it isn't working, how you can dissolve this without destroying each other and ultimately our community. More than that, I don't have anything to say except that just because multitudes of people couldn't make it here tonight, it doesn't mean that they agree that you should not do your job. You swore to do it, and I believe you will.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Karen Rath. I live in Gasky. Supervisor Sullivan is my supervisor. I have self-hauled my garbage for 7 years in Crescent City, very satisfied with the fees. I don't know where I could go once every 6 weeks or so and drop off garbage for $7. I just don't think that exists. I appreciate having that option. Currently in Gasky, where I'm living, I have pickup and perfectly satisfied with it. I think the last couple speakers have actually been the most honest with what's going on here. Mr. Gillespie called it a witch hunt, and the lady that spoke before me very specifically pointed out her idea of, 2 people making too much money in this county. And that's what it seems like the bottom line of this is. It's a witch hunt. It's a personality issue. It's a personal issue, and it makes no sense at all. The service works. You guys have had plenty of time and many groups and lots of studies. Nobody has come up with a solution or an alternative that is better than what we have now. So before you go on carrying on the way you've always been carrying on, Please, look at what's been done. Look how well the system works. Put aside personality issues. Put aside personal political agendas, vendettas, whatever it is. Move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Just before you speak, anyone else going to be public comment? Because we have one more topic to do tonight after this one. So go ahead.
I suppose in all fairness, I should give the other side of this, this deal that's going on here.
You need to identify yourself too, Johnny.
What's that?
You need to identify yourself into the mic.
Johnny Jacobs, Bayside Excavation. I do commercial hauling into the place. But there's some unfavorable things that goes on there that I end up hauling most of my stuff to Brookings. When you got to pay $40 for a mattress or $20 for a mattress and $40 for a couch. Today I was supposed to haul 20 mattresses and 7 couches. Going to take them to Brookings. I know it's probably against the law, get in trouble for it, whatever. I've asked several times, why can't you make it to where us commercial guys can bring our car oil, our motor oil out there? D8 Cat, you have 30, 40 gallons of oil at any time. Dump truck, you put 11 gallons in the engine. We can't take it out there. We have to hunt up someone to take it. Curry up there will take my oil at 50-gallon drums. I just take it up there and they take it and I get my drums back. Why do we have to keep seeking other places? Concrete. Do you know what it costs to take a truckload of concrete out here to this place? We could turn it into an enterprise out there. That's a collection spot already set up. Why not have a crusher there and turn it into good, useful products? When you got to spend $1,500, $1,600 for a truckload of disposed concrete to get rid of, that's pretty expensive. If it's being run so properly, then how come we have these problems there that makes it where I'm better to taking it to Brookings? We need to be looking at that avenue because there is some big payments and payrolls going on out there. There's some cost that we can get cheaper up across the border. Something's wrong with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the boards. Councilwoman Murray?
First of all, I want to thank everyone who was here and made public comments and those here that were just listening to see what we're doing and understand the process that occurs when we have these types of discussions. I especially wanted to thank a couple of people. The former supervisor from Mendocino, Elizabeth Henry, welcome back home. And when you mentioned that privatization is a political act, I believe that you're absolutely right in what I see happening here. That's my opinion. And I believe that we are being financially responsible in keeping the JPA as is. I think it's been studied to death. We've had task force, we've had discussions. To me, it's not very responsible even to spend $50,000 or more to study when the operation is working very efficiently. And if we do need to make some improvements and increase our opportunity for recycling, that's the first I've heard of it, but I think that those are good ideas, and being able to possibly crush the cement and use that as a recycling thing. I don't know if we could do it, but I like that idea, and being able to possibly recycle commercial oil as well. So I like those suggestions. It doesn't mean that it's impossible to do here. I think that we've had our hands full. I was on the Solid Waste Authority Board for a couple of years, and there were some bigger fish to fry, but we are recycling carpet now, so we're making progress on introducing new ways to recycle different things. And those are my comments.
Thank you. Any, Councilman Holly?
Thank you.
I wasn't sure if you want to speak or not. He was, yeah.
Okay, I'm recognized, Mayor? Yes. Thank you. I just want to say thank you to all those that talked. I think in the year and a half I've been on the City Council, we've had a lot of public hearings. and you were all very eloquent and organized, and I appreciate the thought you put into your presentations. That said, I also appreciate this particular opportunity. We all have kind of sensed that there's been this undercurrent that's been present for quite a while. And at least now it's out in the open, it's above board, we're on top of the water instead of underneath it. And hopefully we'll get some closure one way or another on this issue. So thank you all for being here.
Supervisor McClure.
I too want to thank everyone for being here and say that I would love to just put this to bed and say we're just going to continue to move forward and not have to do any kind of analysis, because I too think it's been studied to death. But I will, if it is decided that there's an analysis, it best be broad-based, because it's not fair to say privatization. I also want to thank the solid waste staff, because I know they do an incredible job. As we were making this discussion this evening, I just Googled the California legislative information of what's happening with tracking different bills, and I just Googled waste as one of the bills, and currently there are 111 bills that deal with some type of waste, and those go from things like identifying at last in the Ocean Conservancy Council that 80% of the trash we find in the ocean is generated on land, and so we need to start figuring out how not to get it into the waste stream, into the water stream, and continuing to do that, to the fast food containers that are going to need to be biodegradable as opposed to the plastic containers, because we are getting such a vast amount, because so many million people eat out of restaurants that serve out of windows. There's a bill that's going to limit the number of beads the beads that are sold in California, because these little beads contain arsenic and lead. And we don't want those to be in our waste stream, and we don't want those to be in our water. There's waste discussion about what's happening with the manufacturing of pharmaceuticals. There's finally another bill that's out for the collection of sharps. There's a bill that is out that will require mattress manufacturers to have producer responsibility and have a plan on how those mattresses are going to be disposed of. And all of these bills, I don't know how many will actually get out of committee and actually make it to the floor and actually be signed, but all of those bills have to be interpreted locally, and that's our staff. And every person that I've ever met at a staff at the state level that deals with waste is aware of Del Norte County Solid Waste Authority because of the remarkable job and the information that our team has in being able to interpret and apply the rules. And in fact, we are usually used as one of the pilot for rural communities because we have a system that works. So I would urge us to take a bold step tonight and not consider the language that we had up here previously that said consider privatization, but we don't vote and we leave it as is and let a sleeping dog lie. So I would urge us to please leave it as is.
Supervisor Hemmingson, we'll just go in order here.
Yeah, this won't take long. I love the self-diagnosis thing, and I appreciate Mr. Gillespie's talk on studying things to death, and I'm sure he feels the same way about 199 and 197. As for for our unlined decaying landfill, which I requested some time ago for the Solid Waste Authority to look at the possibility of insurance, we still haven't seen that come out. So we have this unlined decaying landfill, which somebody brought up. We have no insurance. We have an unfunded post-closure liability fund, or no fund at all for post-closure. We have a post-employment benefits package that is unfunded or not completely funded. We have depreciation that is not funded, unfunded depreciation. So, you know, I don't know where, I mean, I'm just looking at the money side of it. You can take personalities out of it, you know, or put personalities in it. I don't care. I'm looking at the long-term effects on Del Norte County and the ratepayers, and the things that have been done, or the lack of things that have been done. I don't know where you guys are getting your information, but the information that I've seen shows that it is not being run very well financially, and it needs to be looked at. And as far as oversight, there was privatization. I don't think there was ever any discussion that there would not be some government oversight, whether it be with franchise agreements or whatever it is. There's always going to be government oversight as far as I'm concerned. That's all I can say.
Councilwoman Schwam.
I don't have a lot more to add. Following up on what Mr. Hemmingson just said, I would just like to say welcome to the state of California, because we are regulated to death, and sometimes that can be good and sometimes it can be really bad, and sometimes it results in fees and rates that we don't like to pay. I feel that the Solid Waste Authority runs pretty well. I think that they do a lot of work that the normal person doesn't see, and I am always fine with looking at the way we do business. I'm worried about the cost to do that, and what that means. But if we agree, or if the Solid Waste Management, my opinion is, if your board agrees to move forward with a study, is that you look at everything and not just one piece of it.
Thank you. Supervisor Gitlin.
I'd like to say thank you to everyone who got before the dais and spoke tonight. I heard a lot of things, a lot of inaccuracies. I heard a psychologist come up, and maybe you're available for me and I can talk to you a little bit. But
she's really good.
Thank you, Kelly. You have experience. Clearly, the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority is not running things well. That's why we're having this discussion. And no one should be demonized for having this discussion. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're happy. And I appreciate everybody has a right to have their own opinion. But factually, it's over $145 a ton, which is 35% more than Brookings, to move our trash from point A to point B coming out of Del Norte County. That's higher, exceptionally higher than anyone else. There's something wrong about that. You're paying for that. Now we're looking at these things, and we should be looking at these things. And if we can, and really I'll refer back to the psychologist over there, this is really about two things. This is not about a witch hunt or people. This is about service to the community, and nobody, certainly not me, wants to see the service deteriorate. I'm not of that opinion, and I will never be. And this is about money that we can save for our local consumers. Right now, our commercial consumers are taking a huge hit, and you're paying for it. You just don't know it. And right now, the private sector is getting a benefit. But let's not be naive. How long do you think that will last? And then rates will go up. We have a level of bureaucracy, and I'm going to use that word not as a pejorative word. It's a level of government that is not functioning well. And it has to be looked at. And we as a board, indeed, we do have a fiduciary responsibility. Can we maintain the quality of service and even improve it by moving toward the private sector? And can we lower your rates? And how would you like to think about having your rates lowered by 20%? How would you like to think about the county having a $12,000 a month franchise fee and the city an $8,000 a month franchise fee, and rates have actually gone down 20%? How would you like that? Would that compute with you? Well, it ought to, because that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to save you money. So the station, the transfer station is a viable product. It has a value to it, and it is county owned. And that property can be sold. And that I-loan that we're sitting here talking about, which the county is responsible, can be paid off. And we do have insurance policies in place that are affordable, that can pay and maintain any environmental damages. And right now, we are open. We are very vulnerable on environmental damages from an as yet perfectly functioning closed landfill. There are no problems. Think of this objectively. Let's take the personal animus out of this. Let's take the objectivity. Can we do a better job? And that's what this meeting is here tonight. That's what it's all about. And I'm in favor of that additional study. However, Chair Sullivan, I would like to narrow it, and Chair Nia, I'd like to narrow it to the issue of privatization. We don't need to spend excess money on things that we already know. And if we can do that and serve the public better, and Mr. Lonsdale, not drop your service one iota, would you be happy? And I'm asking you that rhetorically as I speak to you and the rest of this audience. Thank you.
Councilman Gastineau.
Well, being new to the council and everything, and I've studied this, and I've talked to Kevin, and I've talked to others about the Solid Waste Authority. I don't see much wrong with it. I do see that we do have a responsibility to look at how we do business and see if there's a better way we can do it. So I would be in favor of a study, but we have to have a plan. We just can't go into this and talk about dissolution, and just go off half-cocked. We have to do something about it. We should have a nice plan to go forward, and that's all I have to say about that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I agree with Councilmember Gastineau and Councilmember Hawley. My first introduction to solid waste was last year when it became a 10-member board. We didn't do very much. It's hard to do with 10 members, and we only had 8 or 9 meetings, and we never got to the critical points. So this year, I'm on the Solid Waste Authority the last few months. We do have financial considerations to look in the future. As a council member, we have to balance our budget. On the solid waste budget, there are problems coming up ahead. Our Supervisor Hemmington talked about that. Those are real numbers. It's going to come to a head pretty soon, and we have to decide what we're going to do. So I don't mind looking at an independent person to come in to tell us what recommendations they would make on various subjects to see if we are doing it. If we're doing it so well, that's what that person's going to say. But I know we have the financial problems, and we need some guidance in that. And because the only other way is to raise rates. We have to come up with our requirements that we have to do, and that's part of my job. As being part of this MOU and Joint Powers Authority, we have to make sure that the numbers balance. And I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. I'm just saying we're just at that point. Just like in the city, we're having a difficult time balancing our budgets, just the way it is right now. And so I don't see anything wrong with having a study, especially since I, as a council member, am not very familiar with solid waste. Councilmember Gastineau isn't. Councilmember Hawley isn't. We have 3 members on our council that are fairly new, and we just don't have that expertise.
All right, thank you. I think the point, if you read the item in the agenda, it really is to get feedback. That was the point. We're not voting on anything tonight, but it's more or less for the authority members to get feedback from both boards. It is a little frustrating for people to bury their heads in the sand and say there haven't been positive things that happened the last couple years. For example, the Solid Waste Authority now no longer has a net deficit, which we had 3 audits in a row that were not addressed, saying you have a net deficit. Now, a business owner, a private business, could never get away with that. But within the Solid Waste Authority, it went on for 3 years. That is something that the ad hoc that was formed before, as well as the last 2 boards have rectified. Ordinances. There were ordinances passed by the Solid Waste Authority with a public member on that board that sat there for 4 years, not elected. Excuse me, Supervisor McClure, if you could please hold off while I'm speaking. Thank you. You've got a member that sat on that board for 4 years without being voted by the public, passing laws that passed this entire county. In fact, the last makeup of the Solid Waste Authority before our 10-member board basically left 2/3 of the county unrepresented on that board. But they were passing laws to affect the whole county. That's not right. That's not correct. That is something we did correct with the 10-member board. Now an ordinance suggested by Solid Waste Authority has to be ratified by both the city and the county to go into effect. Those are good things. So let's not pretend like everything was peaches and cream with Solid Waste Authority. It was not. Stipends, which is my little personal issue. You had $22,500 per year paid out to solid waste commissioners, $300 whether they attended the meeting or not, $75 additional if you attended the meeting for less than a 1-hour meeting. Now granted, some commissioners did put more time in during that time, but 4/5 of that board was already paid a salary as a supervisor or as a city council person to sit on that board. Is that correct? No, it's government pork. Those stipends are gone. And there's no one that can stand up here and say those were appropriate. The public didn't grant those stipends. They were not appropriate. Those are gone. I think the issue I have is that, first of all, the subject of privatization does never assumes no government oversight. You have to have government oversight. It was said earlier. Legally, you have to have government oversight. But to study other options in the current structure of Solid Waste Management Authority without harming the service that Mr. Lonsdale's brought up at more than a few meetings, I think it's the appropriate thing to do. But to sit there and say this has been a witch hunt, it's been a horrible thing, no, there's been some good things that have come out there. You have a task force now that's revitalized, and it's taken, and that's their job. They're mandated to stay active and involved in it. I think one of the things that we've requested, and I know that code enforcement at the county and city have met once, I would encourage us to do that again, but to copy the ordinances, to look at the best parts of those ordinances that were passed before, and make them the same in the city and the county. Those are good things. But let's not pretend like everything was nirvana before with the Solid Waste Authority. When you got an auditor 3 times in a row say you have a net deficit and nothing's done, that's a problem. So at this point, as I mentioned, the point of the item on the agenda is to get feedback from the boards as well as the public to see, and that's more for the solid waste commissioners going forward. At this point, we're going to go to item 6. Let's take a 2-minute recess, or 3-minute recess.
more items.
It's the last item.
He's coming.
Is he in? The other item we put on, item 6, discussion regarding city-county memorandum of understanding. CAO Serena, if you want to speak to this.
The overview is in the memo. I think everybody has it at this point. It's primarily regarding the building inspection services and plan check services. The city has taken a change in policy and has asked to have all new permits run through the city at this point. And I believe that at this point we also would like some direction under the alternative section. There are 2 alternatives that we brought forward. Perhaps the city council and board will give different direction, but at this point there's the on-call status does not appear to be able to work for our building inspection division. A couple of different reasons. One is it's hard to budget for something of that type, and then also making sure that the process is seamless with the building permit, meaning from plan check to final inspection and C of O. So in the alternative section, we've asked to either direct staff to work with the city to revise the current MOU to reflect the policy changes of the city of Crescent City as it applies to shared building inspection and plan check services, or to take no action and direct staff to accept building application on an as requested, as needed basis, which is currently in the MOU. And at this point, if you have any other questions, either myself or Mr. Palazzo would answer those.
Any questions from council people or supervisors? Or comments?
I can start. You know, we had a meeting and we talked about this. The city council is extremely committed to fighting blight. So we hired a part-time building inspector, and we need him right away as we are going through several blighted projects. The county can't be there all the time. It's understandable. They have to do county work too. And so we need somebody right now to do this. And I don't know why this is on here, because it says has needed on here. And as far as budgeting, I'm not sure that, I consider it an extra, not part of the county budget to fund someone. In fact, I started this program. I did a lot of work on this to get the first plan check person here, and I worked with Janine Galtiotto when I was a council member a few years ago. I think it's been 4 years now, and then we got the building. And it was a difficult road to do, because first of all, our plan check person left, and the city was thinking about hiring another one, and we thought, why not combine it? And can the city and county work together? And I said, well, you know what? Put a 30-day clause in there. Let's try it. And it's worked well up until this came up. And the same thing with the building inspector. But we're moving towards blight eradication. We're moving very quickly towards that. And I don't see any change in this MOU. It still says has needed. And we're not trying to stop the MOU. If it's a matter of budgeting, you know, I think that you can't count on an outside agency always to be able to, if we had no business permits, or not business permits, but with building permits, you wouldn't have it. So I really don't understand why this is even on here.
Well, I would add that it is an as needed, you know, the contract does say as needed, but the reality is we're not going to use it as much.
Yes.
We have made a policy decision to go a different direction.
Right.
We've hired a part-time employee, and we're not just fighting blight, we're actually moving into some receivership
Yes.
projects that are taking considerable amount of time,
Mhm.
and we're having some, issues with some of our permits that haven't had follow through, and we need to be more on top of it. And so we've made a decision to move forward with hiring somebody that can address those issues on a daily basis with the city.
Can I ask?
Supervisor McClure and Supervisor Hamilton.
I understand the discussion about wanting to do the blight and stuff, but I'm a bit curious that your building inspector, are you planning on inspecting buildings that are only coming in for a rehab improvements? Or are you going to inspect the buildings where the black mold is growing downtown? And actually, is that what your building inspector is going to do? Or is it only on building projects? Or is it designed to upgrade buildings that you know are blighted in relationship to health and safety?
I think it's all of the above.
It's all of them. It's all of them. Mr.
Wow.
Palazzo, do you want to add anything to that?
So you're going to go into private-owned buildings that aren't asking for building permits and determine health and safety on the building inspector if that building can remain as is, or will that?
No,
will
we
you
are not.
then-
And as you know, there are certain rules and regulations and laws on where we can access buildings. A lot of the ability for our building inspector to inspect buildings is when we obtain business licenses. We have a business license program, within the city that gives us an opportunity to inspect buildings before we sign off on a business license. We have our fire marshal, our building inspector, our planner, take a look at these businesses. It has not been done actively in the past years. We'd like to address that. That is one way to address some of these blighting issues when you have illegal ability to access those buildings. And you can't just go knock on a door and demand to get into buildings.
So I guess my question is, it's in relationship to when it jumps to blight, because maybe I should ask the city's definition of blight. Is it interiors also? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, and I don't,
or is it exterior?
Maybe I should ask what road are you trying to go down here on these questions?
My question is in relationship that if I have a house and I want to put in a new kitchen and I live in the city, does the building inspector, when he comes there and finds that I have, an unsafe bathroom floor, can he do internal blight for a private resident, for the private landowner, or is it external as seen from the street? Or is this designed for a commercial, attempting to clean up your commercial downtown with the blighted properties there? I'm confused of what the job is.
Yeah, and I guess you're confusing. I don't understand your question. There's, and I don't know all the rules and regulations that our building inspector and planner can do to access buildings. That's a whole, code compliance issue, that I'm not that familiar with in the code. Maybe Mr. Black could address that a little bit.
Maybe he can answer.
A little bit better. But when we do have the ability to access, if we get a notice of a complaint, we can contact the property owner and say, hey, we got a notice of complaint, can we inspect?
And you're just using the building inspector as the person that, as the blight officer?
Well, don't confuse.
I'm going to interrupt for a second.
Because it's confusing to me.
Well,
come join the city council and you'll figure it out. But we have a lot of projects that we are fighting right now. A lot of it is, the way people are keeping their properties. We have homes that are, that need to be condemned. We have homes that are filled to the ceiling with garbage and feces. We are trying to address all of those issues. We've started a program to do some receiverships on some commercial buildings that are serving clientele with very, very low standard, not meeting codes. There's a multitude of things that we're trying to address.
Okay.
It's not really just going out and seeking issues inside of a private business.
Yeah. I was just confused because normally the building inspector is project oriented.
Well,
but if you're looking at receivership and you're actually using your building inspector for that, that's a different thing.
And the building inspector, understands the code compliance with the construction of buildings. When you have a roof that collapses on a structure in the city, and you need to go out there and you have to aggressively address those issues and follow up with the property owner, letters, there's a certain process, you need to be, on that right away. That shouldn't happen twice.
Right.
You know, and we need to address those issues immediately. You know, our building inspector, you know, has the ability to see construction happening in our community in red tag. And then we can address, you know, those issues as they come in, you know, either with permitting or zoning, you know, on that nature. So there's, you know, they work hand in hand. Our planning official, code enforcement, and building inspector will work hand in hand.
I get it, because I think that historically, our process was for building permits, pretty much, is what we were doing.
We're expanding.
And you're taking it to another level, so I understand.
It's a business decision.
I get it.
We want to address our economic development.
Got it.
Thank you. Anything else for me?
Go to the next person.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gene.
And you know, I kind of brought this question up at the agenda 2 by 2, was that, you know, there wasn't an ask of the county. There wasn't a disclosure that you are not adequately addressing our needs. It was done without knowledge, basically, of what was going on. And that's my concern, is that we have an agreement, and then that agreement seems to have been undermined by whatever your new process is going to be, without asking the county, can you fulfill these needs? I mean, I don't think that ever came up, or at least I never heard that it came up. So that's my concern. If we couldn't address them, we probably, you know, would have been right behind you saying, yeah, go for it. Okay.
I'll address that. Yep. We did address it. Our staff addressed it several times, and we were given a fee structure to address some of the issues. It looked to us like hiring a part-time employee that we could direct and work with on a daily basis would be more cost-effective for us. And also with the permits, when we started looking into this issue, we found that the city had quite a number of permits that were taken out through the county building department that were never closed out. Inspections weren't completed or finalized and closed out. And so now we're trying to deal with that issue as well. So it was kind of a combination of a lot of different things, but more so just a business decision for the city to address how blight and, you know, those issues are affecting us.
I would like to clarify a little bit after talking with staff. The issue of closing out building permits is based on the code. The applicants have a period of time to be able to call for inspections. So if that's an issue, you have a problem with the code, not a problem with the building inspector not doing their job. I just want to clarify that.
Anything to do with
That's what it sounds like on that, council person. The situation, I believe, here is that if you're going in a different direction with policy, early coordination or at least communication would have been nice. But the bottom line is, in talking with staff, the as-needed basis was never as needed. It was a commitment by the city to use them, and now it's an as-needed basis. It does not appear that that's going to work well for applicants, nor is it going to work well for our staff in building inspection, because they need to be able to plan for things. And when you ask about a budget, yes, they still need the budget. We have decisions to make in regards to our revenue stream and what we do internally. So that is part of that issue.
You know, I have a clear knowledge of this, Mr. Serena, because I'm the one that instituted it. It was as needed from day one, because we decided not to hire that person, and we told Janine at the time, we'll try it. That's why we have that 30-day clause in there. And so I consider it as needed. If you're saying now that you don't want our business, if we can give you any, just let us know, and we'll have to make other plans. Because I don't think we're changing the MOU. It still has needed.
I, for one, want us to get along.
I do too. That's why I started this years ago, and it still has needed, and I don't understand what the problem is. If we bring somebody for you for a building permit, you're going to put them in line with the next one.
I believe if the issues have to do with customer service or have to do with the timeliness of the permit and talking with staff, the as-needed basis has not been as needed. And I beg to differ with that, because all of the building permits through the city have gone through the county.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
so as needed is really not the definition. If that's the policy of the city and the policy of the Board of Supervisors, we'll make it work. But I'm saying at this point, I've talked with staff about some of the issues that would come up, and I do believe there would be an impact on applicants, and there's also some difficulties internally with how we process.
That does bring up some additional questions, though, on my behalf, because I think we were getting to a point where you could go one place and get your permit and go the whole process, and if we're going, if the city's going that route, is that going to, I guess we're going to go away from that then in the process, is that you go to the city, you get the permit at city, and you're issued, but if you're in the county, you're going to have to come to the county and get that. I think we were trying to get that stuff all kind of in one-stop shop type of deal, but no, I understand the need for blight. I mean, I drive through the city enough times that you'd see some buildings that definitely need to be addressed.
And it's not my intention, and I'm only speaking for myself, is to stop the county from doing what they have been doing. We just are in a thing right now with blight. We want to address it, and it's not my intention to change any of the MOU, any of the MOUs that we have. That's not my intention.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was clear. I was always under the impression that this wasn't necessarily a permanent change, but we kind of want to get caught up and we want to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of having a part-time person. And so I wouldn't want to see this memorandum of understanding go away because it may very well be our best vehicle, but we thought it was time to try something else.
And I don't want to say it go away either. I'm just trying to be honest with Jay and say we aren't going to use it as much because we're going in a different direction. So I don't want him to count on that budget amount that he's been seeing.
And that's what I'm saying, same thing, that we're just going in a different direction right now. We can change in the future.
And I think this is, I mean, I know that Jay and Jean have met several times to discuss this since last September, I think is what you said. But, this is when we get together, so this is kind of us saying, this is kind of where we're headed, and it might not work, but that's what we're trying to do.
I'm going to kick it out to public comment unless there's Supervisor Gatlin.
I'm kind of hearing two things. I'm hearing about some feelings getting hurt, and maybe the communication could be improved, but I'm also hearing about a greater good here. And you bring up the subject of blight, I kind of go blind in the lights, so if you say blight, which I determine and define as economic blight, which I define as the physical deterioration of the exterior of one's property, that's how I define it, how it appears from the street. And Mayor Ania, I'm kind of involved with a program that I'm very passionate about.
We're right behind you.
And I think that there is a greater good here. Now, maybe if we can all kiss and make up and just realize that there are some great things that we can accomplish here as the city and the county kind of move in hopefully the same direction to ameliorate some of these terrible problems that deteriorate our communities. So I'm on board with you, Mayor Ania, and your program, but the communication somehow needs to get smoothed out so people's feelings aren't hurt.
I agree with you.
Public comment? Wow, this is quite a change from no public comment. Okay.
We do, thanks.
Yeah, we would, yes.
Thanks for taking so long.
Oh, yeah.
You look like you needed somebody to raise a question. I guess what your question is as the county is how do you budget for what it is that they've asked you to do, and you have to be ready, willing, and able to do when they don't tell you what it's going to be and that they're going to be adding more to it. So I can see your point. I'm surprised that you weren't informed by the city before things went on. That also raises concerns to me as a citizen about the other issue that has been on this board before. One group doing one thing and one group doing another and kind of telling them later. But I don't see any ill will here. I don't see anyone trying to pull anything, but I think that you do need to open up the lines of communication because obviously you knew you were going to do it. and nobody told the county, who's sitting there with these officers, and they've planned a budget to do your work also. And then I guess you're adding to the scope, so you didn't think that was something that was covered. But, yeah, talk.
Well, our council actually just made this decision about 3 weeks ago.
Yes, that's true.
It was when our final vote, I mean, that's when we made our final decision, so, I mean, we knew that Gene and Jay had been talking about it for a while. We decided to just see what kind of a, go through a job search and see what was out there, and we ended up finding a really qualified person that lives here. And we just hired him. I think he started
Last week.
May 1st, May
Weeks
1st?
ago.
May something, I don't know. Anyway.
Was there any other public comment too, by the way, on this issue? Because I'll close public comment. Public comment's closed. Bring it back to the board. One of the things that I hope, and it really is a goal, and I know we've discussed it before, is I really would like to get to a point where, as a person, make improvements to their building, building a new structure, they can go to one place in this community, whether it's at the city or whether it's at the county, and they don't have to jump all back and forth. Just on a personal business owner, I replaced the doors in my office. I had to go to the city to get the permit, go back to the county, have the plan inspection done, and then I had to go back to the city. Just didn't make any sense at all. It was ridiculous.
We wanted to see you twice.
Yeah. Anyway, it came down to that. It really, to me, I would hope we're going in a direction in this small of a community with the budgets as tight as they are, is that we are going to go to a situation where we can look at some services, and if we can jointly do them, then let's go that direction. It's going to make it easier for the community and business owners, property owners, contractors, anyone doing those, of having to jump back and forth is absolutely ridiculous, is just one example, and that's what I would like to see going forward, is that you've got one stop, and that's it. You get your permit, whether that's a city or county, you're not jumping around. And whether that's the greater Crescent City or the lesser Crescent City, who knows which of the ones, according to the
I've
population.
always agreed with that.
So
One-stop
what?
shopping for your business needs and permitting needs. I'm in full support of that. Maybe the, a city council person and a supervisor can sit down together and talk about, because I'm not completely educated with everything I just said about the permits. But I just know there were issues, but that wasn't really the reason we did this, we're just going down a different path. But, we're learning a lot of great things about how to fight blight. And it might benefit the county, we're hiring, people to help us with receiverships, and they are a very powerful tool that you can use, and that ends up not costing you.
Right. And their deadlines.
And they're
There's
being
hard deadlines.
financed by, somebody else, not the city.
I would like to, two really good things I think that did happen in an increased community. We had a couple 2x2s with the city in the process, and I think maybe those need to happen a little more frequently, because we've already committed to having 2 meetings a year with both boards. I think having that 2x2 ongoing with the city,
Yeah, a couple months.
even on a quarterly basis or a couple months, just getting that dialogue going, from council to board and board to council. So, all right, any closing comments? Because I'm sure we're not going any further on this. I don't think there's any action to take on this. So we're going to go, any closing comments, or we just close it? You had to leave like 15 minutes ago.
Hey, stay. Adjourn, please.
All right, we're going to adjourn the meeting now.